everyone. Welcome to another awesome FileMaker Day. It is Friday. Welcome to an awesome FileMaker Day where we do FileMaker every day because every day is an awesome day to be doing FileMaker. Trust me, I know we do that. So welcome everyone who is made it on a Friday. Today has kind of been on again, off again kind of day. A lot of times people that normally would be here don't come on Fridays historically. And then we have some really random people that do show up on a Friday, which is kind of strange. People that we won't see any other time of the week. So welcome to FMTrain.tv. Every day, Monday through Friday at 1 o'clock Pacific, we do this training. So real quick, on an upcoming live broadcast schedule, if I pop it up and slide over here, we have broadcast today. Monday is day one of reporting. And then the second and the third, Tuesday and Wednesday next week. I will be out on Wednesday, looks like. The schedule, the physical I was supposed to do yesterday got jacked up and they screwed up the paperwork, or I screwed the paperwork up. Someone got it screwed up. And so then we will be doing that next Wednesday. Someone else will be running the broadcast, but Nick will be continuing 3 days of FileMaker reporting. It's the basics, then we move on from there. Then Thursday that week, Jacob Taylor will be back for super basic DAPI. Data API integration. It's mostly about taking data out of FileMaker and putting it on a web page or doing a basic record submission. So it's really straightforward stuff. It's pretty technical. If you're a bunny, it will any bunny grade people that show up will just be obliterated. So understand it's probably a more deep conversation. Then we have the container backup optimization, really good stuff. If you have an organization with a lot of containers, we highly recommend that you check that out. And then on the following Monday, we've got gold coins in the desert. So once again, we found the secret stash of gold coins. These actually come out of FileMaker 19.2.2. Really great stuff. And of course, not really being thoroughly well communicated by people. So that's my job. My job is to communicate with the masses to let you know what's going on with the FileMaker platform. So pretty awesome. So let's see. So Heidi Porter on Twitch today. Oh, welcome Heidi. Awesome. Great. So today's kind of an open-ended, kind of a weird day today because we weren't going to do it. We ended up doing it. And then, of course, Port Moyer is around, which is always interesting. So we're going to be talking about a couple different things today. And next Friday, if you're into Friday, next Friday will be FileMaker Container Backup Optimization. For those of you who only come on Fridays, you can see the schedule right here. As a reminder, this is all free content. Everything you see here is free. If you want to help support the channel, we do ask that you check out the bundles and have one of our training bundles. Purchase that, and that will give you way better content. Even this, it's organized. It's about 90 to 100 hours of FileMaker Pro, FileMaker Server, FileMaker Cloud, FileMaker Go, FileMaker WebDirect. We really hammer. It's pretty comprehensive. So complete course of material there. It's the biggest course for FileMaker, period, in the community. So anyway, update, the book is in market. Right here is the 2021 book. You go to Amazon and get that. Also, there's supposed to be a link here at some point where you can download it. We sent everyone who got our newsletter. Of course, some of you mark our emails as spam. You don't read them, which is fine, but then they wonder where they're. I have people like, how come you didn't send me the book? And I'm like, well, we sent you the book 3 times. I don't know where it's at. Check your spam. I checked my spam. Then they get this. Oh, I checked my spam. It was in there. I'm sorry. So what I want to do is I want to bring up. Oh, one last thing. There is a broadcast coming up. It's called FM. It's a paid course. It's right here. As a reminder, if you wanted to learn more about this design aesthetic, specifically how to take your layout and the specific steps. Step 1, do this. Step 2, do this. Step 3. Very mechanical because a lot of us aren't artists. If you're an artist, you're like, oh, I'm going to do this, and I feel like this, and the colors, that palette, that Pantone color is off by a half a fraction of 1 degree, right? That's the artist people. They can figure this out on their own. Most of us are not that artistic, right? And so we need a little bit of guidance on how to make something pretty in FileMaker. Right? Definitely, in my case, that would be a true statement. So you can go to that website, and it's about 5-hour course, and you'll get the videos for that too. Otherwise, that content is paid content only available at that location. Okay, so so that's that, and so then let's see, Jacob Taylor, are you there? Are you ready to talk about kind of some of the happenings that you've run into in the last week? With
Sure.
FileMaker, would you like to show
Yeah.
your screen briefly here?
I can show my screen. You're not going to see a whole heck of a lot.
Or why don't we show you? Why don't you show your face
Oh, we can
first?
do that. Yeah,
Why don't we
yeah.
show your face, right? So it was. I need to
Where's
be like, am I
my
like to change my
first
angle here,
thing?
or I have to reverse my? What if I reverse
Oop.
myself? Like,
Why is it asking me for permission?
uh,
Uh, oh, hold on. I'm being silly. I am the tech person and I can't operate a computer. Thank you, everyone. Nice to meet you.
nice to meet you. Yeah, you're a server guy, and he has no idea how the camera works. All right, so Jacob Taylor, let's talk about FileMaker Server because we got some customers that called us yesterday, and they're like, "Hey, what happened? Can you want to walk us through this because it was very confusing conversation, right?" So
Sure, sure. So you guys might be aware the old version of FileMaker Cloud, now retconned as FileMaker Cloud for AWS. Basically, the legacy version of that is
we
going
call
away.
it Cloud One. Even Claire's
Yeah.
documentation, they call it Cloud One.x. Okay, so
Yep.
yes.
Yep. So yeah. For ease, we say Cloud 1 and Cloud 2 because that makes it a lot easier to keep track of. So so they've told us, hey, Cloud 1's ending. It's supposed to go away totally Jan 4 next year. I don't know what that means, but maybe important things turn off or something else. Fine. So we're working on moving clients over either to the new cloud platform for people that applies to, or a FileMaker server on site or in AWS. Most of them are in AWS. So one of the interesting things that we've run into is that Claris is reaching out to some of our clients and asking them, hey, do you want to do, like, are you doing to FileMaker Cloud, like, kind of where are you guys going? They're talking to, sometimes they're talking to RCC, sometimes they're talking to the client, sometimes both. Just trying to get a sense of, before your renewal comes up, like, where are you going to go? Are we bringing you over, or like, what's happening, that kind of stuff. So.
I'm talking to the Claris bot right now, so you can keep going.
Oh,
Thanks
okay,
for
cool.
confirming that. Enjoy our website. Our team is working hard on new web experience and for our valued customers. Okay, so what did they tell our valued customers on the phone?
Yeah. So we there's an email chain with this is the third client I've heard from now in different levels of detail. This one's actually the most detailed from them. So they got reached out to by a Claris account representative, and that person was basically trying to get them to go onto FileMaker Cloud 2. And it's for this particular client, it's just not a good fit. It'll be really expensive for them if nothing else. But they're also in a position where they're about to be able to harness a bunch of growth later this year. They're likely to double their staff and that kind of stuff. And so it's just the FileMaker server on Amazon is going to be the correct choice for them. And they knew that already. And so this Claris representative reached out and presented these couple of options and was, cloud or server, and was like, hey, which one do you want to do? But put down in the email for them, basically presenting it as if there was exactly two options. And the two options that were presented were the new cloud platform or FileMaker Server. But the way that they talked about FileMaker Server is, and it's what's in Claris's marketing material, that is the on-premise version of the product. And so they were basically asking, are you going to be on the cloud or are you hosting in your office?
I'm asking their robot this. It seems to be confused by the question, right? So, basically the premise is that FileMaker Server knows where your office is and only works on premise. If you want it to be installed or work anywhere, then on a cloud, then you have to use Cloud 2. And so a Cloud 2 has a lot of limitations on what it can do as compared to FileMaker Server. So, and of course, well, the robot's easily confused, but it's not. I'm just having fun with it while Jacob's explaining this, so we have two conversations going at once. But the short version was that they basically implied that if you want to have your FileMaker hosted outside the office, you must use Cloud 2, which is grossly incorrect. And the customer knew it was incorrect and kind of played along on the phone, but it was like, and I don't blame it. Sales guys don't know, or people, guys, gals, whoever they are. I mean, they're really not technical people. They're just there to take your credit card, assuming that you want to give it to them, right? At the end of the day, it's kind of that simple. So, But understand that so Oregon Dean just says, Claire's called me about Cloud 1, bypassed my Rep 2. They gently pushed Cloud 2. I told them that we roll our own AWS Linux box. For us nonprofits, that's the best deal. That quieted them up. Yes. So what? Okay. So this is coming from a independent third person. So let me find Discord for that so everyone can see this. So this is the conversation down here at the end. Woo! Here it is. So this is Oregon Dean right here. He's basically verifying what we already saw. So it's yeah, they direct you to a person, except that the person, most of the people at the entry level sales department, basically, listen, they're incentivized to sell Cloud 2 because they make more money on Cloud 2, right? The problem is for the sales team, it's really unfortunate for the sales team, is that it's an inferior product. In a couple ways, it's better, but in a lot of overall just raw capabilities, it's limited, right? For example, if you want to use 360 Works and do synchronization, it won't do it, right? You can't do it with that product. So it's kind of if you want synchronization, you want easy deployment, use the deploy tool, pick all the things that you want to do. It just doesn't do them. If all you need is basic Pro, basic Go, basic WebDirect, and nothing else, then it's just fine. Does that make sense? So, yep.
It also doesn't do plugins on the server side at all.
Yeah, well, then that leads to all these limitations, right? And of course, they don't want to have plugins in there because maybe that's a security issue for them. That's fine, but plugins are how we get around the limitations of the platform. Plugins and add-ons, right, are how you get around limitations. So, anyway, Sue, because we had Charles Schmidt here, Christian Schmidt here yesterday. I always call him Charles, from the Monkey Bread guy, and he's always talking to us about, plugins aren't evil, we love plugins, blah, 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 right? And I understand him saying that. It makes perfect sense. But at the end of the day, I think you can use plugins. But I have an individual who I haven't talked to in a long time, and he got a site license for kind of 360's plugin products. And so he promptly said, well, since I own all their plugins, I'm going to install every last plugin on my FileMaker server, all 15 or 18 of the plugins. And their server would... So there are limitations of what you can do in terms of stability with your FileMaker server or your copy of FileMaker Pro with running plugins. You shouldn't run every last one you can find, right? Just how that works, right? Find the essential ones, use those, but don't install all of them just because you can, right? Because they won't run for long that way. Heidi's probably bobbing her head up and down, I'm sure. So anyway, questions from anyone on the product positioning. So here's the deal. Cloud 2 from Claris, they don't call it Cloud 2, but every time you see a version reference, like if you go to Claris and you say, oh, I want to see, like, I always like it, Claris, don't call it Cloud 2. Okay, great. So we want to find like documentation and updates. Documentation. So let's go to documentation. Okay, that's cool. Shh. I can't say that. Can you say that word for me, Jacob?
What's that word?
Yeah. What's that word? So look right here. Oh, there's the number right there. Oh, it's even on their website. You can't call it that, Richard. Okay, never mind. I'm not calling it that. All right. So this, like, FileMaker Cloud DOS, for those of you who don't know any Espanol, DOS. This is DOS. This is what we're talking about right here. This is where Claris takes the hardware and the software and they roll it out. And conceptually, it's really, really, really awesome, right? Really awesome. I love it. But they charge, I think at a 5 and 10 and 20 user level, it's kind of reasonable. But I had a customer who had 75 seats, and they decided that if they rolled their own server and kind of kept track of the server themselves, they would save so much money they could take their entire IT team to Hawaii for a week, right? No joke. So there's a pretty big markup when you start adding lots of people to Cloud 2. Jacob?
Yeah. That's also because so one of the like pricing differences, so whatever about the different numbers actually, but one of the pricing differences between Cloud 2 and other licenses that you might use for FileMaker Server is as you buy more licenses for FileMaker Server, the price per seat decreases over time. I think it bottoms out at $10 or $11 a seat, whereas that doesn't happen with Cloud 2. And so you're paying I don't know what the cost is on Cloud 2 per seat or whatever, but it's flat all the way out to 100.
Yeah, it's like $25 a seat thereabouts.
Something like that.
Yeah, it's pretty high. So yeah.
And so for server, it's 15 like at the bottom, and then it drops from there. It goes 14, 13, 12, 11. I think
Yep.
it might go down to 10. I forget. Maybe it's 11. But,
yeah, it depends on the amount of server you have. But the point is that they take care of it for you. Now, the one feature that's really, and I'll be honest about this, I love, and I think they probably made a strategic decision to only keep it in Cloud 2 as a differentiating factor. They have basically this Active Directory system on it, and that's kind of a loose analogy. Single sign-on. For those of you in the Microsoft shops, most Mac shops don't have this. Microsoft shops that have 20, 30 people, and you've got an IT guy in there, and they do love Microsoft, and they worship Microsoft in Seattle and all that kind of, Redmond, Washington. You do a single line. You can go to any computer, sign on to that computer, and that computer knows who you are because it authenticates to the main server, okay? Claris rolled that out, so they have this whole sign-on system, which is great. You don't have to put individual usernames and passwords in each of the files. You just simply set up the privilege levels, and it's very simple. We've got videos, we've covered it, and it's really awesome for a company that has, like we have 30, 40 files, 50 files floating around. For us, it would be awesome. But we can't use FileMaker Cloud because we need plugins and synchronization and important kind of tech stuff, right? But I really would love that single sign-on. So they were supposed to bring it to FileMaker Server. That was supposed to happen back 2 years ago. Never happened. So either it's been deprioritized off the planet, or they want to keep that as a definitive differentiating reason why you should use Cloud 2, right? But that's, but then you have Microsoft shops who do their own anyway, right? So anyway, so that's how that kind of works. So questions about that? Not really. Pretty straightforward. So FileMaker Server works anywhere you have a compatible version of Windows, a compatible version of the Mac OS, or a compatible version of Linux. It's not married to your office. Literally. It's not like it knows, like, hey, you're not in the same office. I can't work with you, right? I mean, right? So let's give a quick update on Starting Point. So Starting Point, for those of you wondering what this is it's free stuff that we do. It's a CRM that's totally free. And the problem is that people come to me and they go, and this is like the ultimate issue that every company on the planet has. Who cares? A company that cares about user interface and user experience, right? So for example, the opposite of Christian Schmidt. So Christian Schmidt is the opposite of like an Apple or like a Starting Point. It's like, hey, there's a new feature in the Mac OS or Windows OS. Let's bolt that into the plugin. I don't think Christian has ever said no to a feature to add on to his Monkey Bread plugin. That's what we buy it for. It's the ultimate library of all the stuff you can call, right? However, that's because you have to use real code to make the call to make it work, right? But for those of us who actually build a user interface, we can't say yes to 6,500 functions, 6,500 functions. We have to limit the functions, right? So what I'm going to do, Jacob, we're still on your screen, but I'm going to briefly hide you. You're down in the corner. You're still there, but you're kind of hidden. I'm going to go into my copies of Starting Point, wherever they went. Oh, here we go. And so what we have is the free CRM. This has been around for a long time. It was updated a while back. It's going to go through another update here pretty quick. So this is the full version right here. The problem with this is people say, wouldn't it be great if it did this? And wouldn't it be great if it did QuickBooks? And wouldn't it be great if it did this? And wouldn't it be great if it did that? And it does barcode integration all built in, and it also has automatic synchronization and blah, 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 blah. And the problem is that every time you say yes, you complicate it. And one of the things this tool needs to do is help to be a tool for training people on how to build FileMaker. Now, Heidi and people like the Moyers out there, not really doing too much training. They just want something that's really awesome. So they kind of, if they were to use a free CRM like this, they would want the one fully loaded with features because they would understand how it works. But when I'm training Bunny and Megan and people like that, we need something that is simple as possible, right? So if I go back to the dashboard here, we got charts that are cached, and they're not live charts, but they're cached for performance in the server. And this whole thing is really an enterprise grade FileMaker. It's not, there's almost all the critical data that would cause it to slow down is cached, it's processed. There's PSOS going on. It's pretty sophisticated, right? And so the problem is you got to train people on that, right? And so We go to look at the layouts here. We've got mouse layouts. We've got touch layouts. We've got some iPhone layouts. And so the rub was that we wanted to create a copy of Starting Point for training specific called FM Starting Point. What the heck? Oh, it's already open right here. So it's right here. This FM Starting Point Lite. We took out the cache charts. We went to the layout mode. We basically trimmed out all the non-essential stuff, right? So we came here, look at the layouts. We have one set of layouts for mouse. We got rid of the touch layouts, which are for WebDirect and or Go. We got rid of those because if you're a brand new learning FileMaker, you're not brand new learning it on a mobile device. It doesn't work that way. I'm sure people, other companies will be like, oh, you can't do that. Except that when you build in FileMaker, I'll give everyone a little hint, a little super secret tip. When you're building in FileMaker, you're on a Mac or you're on Windows and you're using FileMaker Pro. That's a hot tip for some of you out there who don't actually know that, okay? And as a result of that, you know, you need people are like, well, I want to use FileMaker on my, like, I got a sales guy who doesn't know anything about technology. Literally, I love Ryan, but he doesn't know anything about technology. He goes, I want the CRM built in my phone, right? And people say that all the time. I want it on the phone. I can't count how many people actually really use a CRM system on their phone. It's almost zero because what they do is they get on the phone and they realize I can see 3 fields and a total at the bottom. And so for them to get anywhere, they have to navigate the living crap out of that interface, like drop down menu, 12 lines, scroll, then jump, left, right, up, down. You can't build the whole thing on the phone. It doesn't work that way. But when people first see it, they're like, yes, we want the entire thing on my phone, right? So anyway, very exciting. So what we did is we stripped out all the non-essential stuff. We simplified it. And that's what Starting Point Lite is. So when you download Starting Point, you're going to you go to on the website. You're going to say, send me the email. It's going to give you the links to Starting Point. This is what we call the Standard Edition. There's 4 English versions. That's because English might be English, but English ain't the same everywhere. And so you got the U.S. version with U.S. dollars and timestamps and dates and address, thing like that. You got a UK version for pound sterling. You got an EU version for euros. You've got an Australian version because the people that deal with wallabies and kangaroos and stuff like that, they have their own like way of doing stuff, totally different. So even though you think it's English, it's not really English. So we have 4 different versions for that to support that. And then the light version is a US English only version because it's mostly for training. It's not so much for you to build your next CRM, right? So just so we all on the same page there. I do need to pop open the one window over here to make sure that we can see the questions and answers on YouTube. Okay, so I've been ignoring the YouTube people. I feel bad about that. Let me give you a little bit of love real quick. And I see AL has got a question there. So Tim's there from Dublin, Ohio. Michael Gravel there from Quebec. Grant is from Australia. Michael, question. Last week, Jacob suggested to increase the RAM cache as much as possible. The company that hosts our application said just the opposite. Okay, as much as possible. We didn't say that. Well, boy, I tell you, Jacob, you want to pitch? You want to answer that one?
Yes, as much as possible, but that does not mean consume all of the RAM on the system, which is, I'm assuming, how someone would interpret that.
Yes. So what I need to do? Your camera has died. If you want to like fix. Your
did
camera,
it?
Yes.
Okay.
So what we said, Michael, last week is that there is a loose formula for what you should set it for. It's normally about a gigabyte less than 50%. So if you have 16, we're all going to do some math together. Everyone ready for a little algebra? So take the amount of RAM, divide by 2, put that in little parentheses, minus 1. And that is, so if this computer right here, about this Mac, was my FileMaker server, it says 32, divide by 2 is 16, minus 1 is 15. We would set our RAM cache on this computer for 15. Now I'm going to run into people who are going to be like Nick Orr and Christian Schmidt, who are serious code monkeys, who are going to go, but you should spin an analysis and do the test and do a stopwatch, and then until you get to the exact answer. That the correct answer is 13.5 gigabytes. That would give you the most optimal performance. Okay. This gets you pretty close because FileMaker's default is not even a full gig. It's 512 megabytes. So to be clear, the hosting company you're talking to should know that. And if they don't know that, you need to fire that hosting company and get a new hosting company because they're morons. Okay? Because that's how we told the story about the FileMaker server. So we didn't say if you have 32 gigs of RAM, you should assign 32 gigs to FileMaker. We didn't say that. We say the formula is divide by 2. So we're down to 16 minus 1, 15. That should be your starting point, starting place number to use. I don't spend the time refining it that anally, okay? Because I buy a little extra RAM on the computer, I give it to it, it's fine, it's happy, it mostly does what it. But if you have a really giant database, like for example, a stupid thing to do is we have a customer with a database that's 183 gigs. I'm a little concerned about that. So there's some surgery going on to get that taken care of. 183 gigs, a little on the big side. So if you have a 32 gig machine and it's 16 gigs or 15 gigs allocated to that, and it's 132 gigs, probably that ain't enough RAM. You probably need more. You probably need 250 gigs of RAM and on the machine, if you can even get that much. And then you would divide by 2, get 128 minus 1, 127. So something like that. It makes sense? That would get you much closer. Okay. Is there information available to sync FM starting point to calendar to Gmail or Outlook 365 client? So I would write that up, Alpha Lima 92651, if one of the people, Andy, if you're here, if you want to copy that, an Alpha Lima 651, you want to send that to Calvin about that. I know that we have connected the calendar to Gmail, various other ways, and you can also use the Zulu plugin from 360works, which is what we do on our own internal system. We have an internal system that uses the kind of the early version of the calendar. We don't take edits from Gmail's calendar, but we push edits. So we make the engineers edit it on the FileMaker side. They could check their iPhone or whatever to see the schedule. They can't make a schedule change on the phone side. I can't remember why there was a reason for that, but there was something about that.
Ooh, Oregon Dean actually just had a good question.
Ooh, okay. Let me jump over here.
I don't have an actual number for that. That's a pending. How do you call that? A pending investigation, I suppose. I need to do some numbers collection. For everybody who's not in Discord, the question Oregon Dean asked is he's using FileMaker Server to try and capture webhooks, which is where you have a third-party service that will. You give them a place on your server and they send you data when something happens, usually event related. Someone purchased something, someone unsubscribed from an email, whatever. And so it lets your server know, and then you can decide what to do with that information.
Okay.
And so he's using the data API to pass that data through into FileMaker.
I do have an answer for this, right? There is an answer. So Claire, go ahead.
I want to finish the rest of the question.
They can see it on screen too if they do look. So yes.
Oh, my bad. I didn't see that.
So any suggestion on how many webhooks can be processed per second? I guess I need a site that can repeatedly post to a URL that I do. Well, not necessarily. Okay, those are two totally separate topics or conversations. So one is data API is interacting with the FileMaker server, right? I guess I can bring myself up over here. I could put myself in the middle here. So the data API is basically the modern way of a web page or some sort of code interacting with FileMaker server. FileMaker server, it can interact with a FileMaker file. It can authenticate. It can get a token. This whole modern kind of curl kind of action that's going on. This has been tested by Claris up through 400 simultaneous ongoing connections. Now, the ability to actually execute those 400 without them stacking above. So it's 400 simultaneous. So as it finishes one, it releases it, release. So it's 400 simultaneous. Now, you need a pretty beefy server to really support 400 simultaneously. And understand also that the data API can call a FileMaker script. So if each data API call is calling a script, then it's also spinning and running scripts in the background. You don't want that script to be overly heavy. You want it to be as light, as fluffy as possible. So if you have a giant fire hydrant blowing data into FileMaker, like a fire hose blowing into FileMaker, you don't want any friction points to slow that data ingress out. So you'd want to have it go into FileMaker, write the records, save it to the drive as fast as possible. If there's processing that has to be done, you're going to want to peel that off, do that later, on a robot process or PSOS, not PSOS, but SASE, a robot late at night, or on another copy of Pro running a robot separately. That way, nothing is interfering with the fire hydrant blowing the data. Does that make sense? Because a fire hydrant is rated at least through 400 simultaneous streams of water coming and hitting your servers. Does that make sense? So next question he has is, I guess I need a site that can repeatedly post to a URL that I could do on FileMaker Pro Client. Yeah, FileMaker Pro Client can do curl, send curl out, a curl command out, URL out. FileMaker Server can do that running a script.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, finding a script on a FileMaker file. But FileMaker Server can also listen for the inbound curl requests coming in. Because people always talk about like this idea of push and pull. Idea of push and pull is really an important idea in the world of technology. Like you're sitting there with your email client, and your email magically shows up and it goes ding, you've got mail. And so how did that mail get there? Did your client go out to the server and say, hey, is there any mail for me? And it pulls it down. Or did the email server somehow shoot a bit of data to your email client and initiate a push, where the server initiates a push action the other way? FileMaker Server can do push and pull. It can go both ways. As a general rule, FileMaker Pro can push only. It doesn't sit there listening. It doesn't sit listening. That's what FileMaker Server does. It's also something that's really difficult in FileMaker Cloud too. It's doable, but extremely difficult. So that kind of makes sense a little bit about that. So the design decision right now is to whether to receive webhooks into my MySQL and let FileMaker suck them out as it can. I have ODBC. So MySQL, say SQL system in general, will be infinitely able to process a fire hose better than FileMaker. FileMaker does a lot of great things. It has limits the amount of fire hose it can take, right? So MySQL, Microsoft SQL, pick some SQL system. It's pretty light and fluffy. Now you could screw up the SQL system and have it do a bunch of processing that will slow it down. But at the end of the day, pound for pound, it's way more fast. That's not good English. Way more fast than FileMaker, okay? But it also is not very user-friendly, and it's not really low code. It's like only extreme code, right? That's what you get with SQL. Okay, so Scott Kane says, curious to see if Jacob had time to analyze the FileMaker Server Linux Docker information I sent to him.
Some of it, yeah.
The answer is do you have thoughts yet, or are you still collecting your data?
So one of the things that he had sent was a blog post. I wish I actually knew who wrote it. It's one of the other consultancies. Basically what they did is they did a side-by-side performance comparison between I think it's basically like a medium FileMaker Server on Windows, like the 2016 one on Amazon, and then compared it to Linux, just generally, like you put the same size machine up and did FileMaker Server for Linux, and then did the test. And then the second one was essentially the same thing, except they put the FileMaker Server software inside of a Docker container. And the basic change that enables is FileMaker Server gets to continue to pretend that it only has, it can only use one CPU core at a time, except that the bubble that Docker provides around it lets you actually use all of the available cores. And so one of the things that was noted is there was a pretty significant performance boost there, which, yes, would be true, because if you go from only being able to use one core to being able to use all of them, basically, you're going to have a bump in performance, basically. There is one FileMaker hosting company, somebody that you pay them money per month and they host your databases for you, that will do that Docker-based hosting for theoretically maximum performance or something like that.
Okay,
so
that's interesting. I was not aware. I've not had the chance to play with Docker. Life is busy enough with all the things we do. Docker is just another online. It's a very popular. Is it still as popular? Because I remember at one point Todd Geis would run around going Docker, 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 Docker. You couldn't get him to shut up about Docker. Now I don't hear him talk about it at all, which means that either he's got bored with it, or it's not quite the thing anymore. I don't know. Maybe the Port Moyer folks can kick out a thought on that. But
Yeah, I would say no. I think it's still pretty big.
okay.
I don't know how it is in the FileMaker community itself, but outside of that, you basically have kind of three. I guess maybe there's a fourth choice in there if I could find one, but you basically have three like virtual choices, which is no virtual. You're running it directly on the system. There's like slightly virtual, which is something like a Docker container, some kind of container system generally, or all the way out where it's a virtual machine. The whole thing is virtualized.
Well, Heidi just said that they do, that Docker, the company itself, does hosting as well. So she's going to find the link for that.
One more thing does Docker hosting. Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
I think that's who was talking about it.
I'm going to leave the Docker thing and come back to the Organ Ding question real quick about the ODBC. So it's a really good point. Really, really good point. So here's the thing. So there are natural bottlenecks or friction points in the FileMaker platform where you can't do things really, really fast. One of the really known bottlenecks is the ODBC integration, which also kind of plays to the ESS stuff. People go, oh, I'm going to do this FileMaker capture with SQL, and then I'm going to bring this data in at full speed with ESS and da 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 da. So there is a constriction in the fire hose when you go through ODBC. So my thought process is that if you can not use ODBC, don't use it. If you're going to use it, make sure you use it kind of in an offline, not super real time, not sensitive to fire hose conditions kind of thing. Because, for example, if you could do data input into FileMaker through DAPI, you would get a speed of X. Say, I'm just going to say it'll go 100 miles an hour. Okay. If you try to do data input through FileMaker with ODBC, my guess is that you'll have about 5 miles an hour. Literally, the performance, I think, is that stark. It's pretty radical. And so as a result of that, you don't want to do ODBC unless it's kind of like an offline process where it's doing a sync and then you have time for it to spend hours doing it, etc. So you want to avoid that if possible. Okay. Some people love ODBC just because they know it, but it's a natural bottleneck in the world of FileMaker, just is, right? Once again, that's for Organ Dean, thinking about how to have all this data go shooting into FileMaker. You could try it with FileMaker, but be prepared to move it to SQL and then back flush it or back suck it into FileMaker slowly. Hell, you don't have to even do it with ODBC. You could do it through a curl request or something and make a curl option.
Yeah, and I actually just as a trying to find more information out. I would be interested in what transaction per second level Organ Dean is looking for out of data API, or for these webhooks, like how many records per second is he trying to push?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that gets into how much. I mean, when we talk about Firehose, we're talking about a lot of data, right? So if your Firehose is 3 fields, 20 characters every 3 seconds or 5 seconds or something, that's going to be pretty damn easy. But if you're trying to send me a page of text every 1 second or half second, you're going to be straining FileMaker to do that. I think we have
RCC has, so I built a metrics collector for our servers, which is, it's kind of still in beta, frankly, but I built that. And so what that thing does is it fires, and it's about 30 fields actually worth of data. It's from each server every 5 minutes, which is about how often Amazon collected that stuff. It's just an arbitrary, whatever. I just was like, pick a time. But across hundreds of servers, you get a little data rate there. I haven't seen that do anything at all, cause any kind of load or anything like that. I'm not going to go through that actually on air because the code's we'll just say not great currently. But that's a PHP. I used our data API wrapper and a very short piece of PHP to just ingest those records when they come in. All it literally does is it's a create record call. It logs in, creates a record, and logs back out again. That's the whole thing.
Pretty fuel efficient. So we're having 2 parallel conversations going here because people kind of chime in. So Chris Moyer actually surfaced. It's like when the submarine little periscope and starts looking around and then right down. So the periscope comes up, says Fabrice, who's another heavy hitter in the FileMaker community, really good guy. I talk to him very rarely, but I guess Chris talks to him, says that Docker is not straightforward with FileMaker Server. He says FileMaker Server wants a specific IP, and Docker is somewhat loose with that. Had to hardware an IP to Docker instance. So yeah, so FileMaker wants to know where it's at. And so if it doesn't know where it's at, you're gonna have to figure that out. So Chris had that little tip there. Was there ever a white paper done about Docker and FileMaker? Or was it just a bunch of like people sitting around the bar on a Friday night at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock saying, "Hey, how do you do Docker?" Sure, right? I mean, it's all like what do we call tribal knowledge around the campfire, right? It's because this is campfire time right now. So, okay, so here we go. So Organ Dean continues. So, would you advise separating the data API from a script that runs on the data? Without reading the rest of it, I would say I would separate it if the script is very long. If the script is like a loop and a this and a that, and it's 300 lines of code. If the script is set one field or do something and commit record, then I would leave it, just between you and me. Prioritize the processing of the webhooks. Yeah, I mean, that's where it has to be. So listen, you try it and you see what happens in real time. And does it clog up? I mean, you're asking me if 12 people go to the bathroom and no one flushes, will it clog? I don't know. You got Organ Dean. Eventually. I mean, you're a doctor, right? They go number 1 or number 2, Organ Dean, right? I mean, that's the thing, right? So you're gonna have to scientifically, you're gonna have to weigh it. You have to weigh it. You're gonna weigh what they leave, and will it flush on a pass? And if it doesn't flush, then you've got too much. Okay, so it's a little scientific. I mean, let's be clear. Organ Dean is a surgeon, so he's seen uglier. Thank you very much. He's a surgeon. He's a scientist. He's actually probably much sharper and smarter than I am. It's not even close. That being said, I'm just reminding him that the scientific method applies here. Get out your stopwatch and try it out. And if it doesn't work, if the penguin flushes an M80 firework down the toilet and it explodes, what is the likely outcome? Measure. Okay, and then if it doesn't work, change what you're doing. Okay. See, Chris Moyer, this is how we have fun. We have exploding toilets and Docker and FileMaker Server in one conversation, right? And then we haven't even put the alcohol on yet, right? So that's how we keep it fun. It's got to be fun.
And I was going to give an even less nuanced answer, which is yes. Just ingesting data, try and have the processing of the data be as separate as possible. You could probably accomplish things like that, for example, with a scheduled script that runs every 5 minutes and picks up the last few, that came in or something like that. If the process can work that way. But it's trying to make the point where you're hitting into the database as light as possible. The way that I built our metrics thing, so like I said, my script just creates a record, and all that is a single field that holds JSON. That's it. But the other 30 fields that get extracted from that are auto enter calculations on the fields. So the PHP does the tiny thing. The data API does its little create record step and puts the data in there and logs back out again. And then the sort of final step at the end is auto enter calcs that extract. Mine is simple because it's just pulling numbers out, but auto enter calculations that pull those particular fields out. So you can separate each step of that chain into the simplest possible part of it. And then if you need to do post-processing because you're doing some kind of alerting or something like that, that's awesome, one. But two, yes, I would separate those things out as much as possible, just to reduce the amount of load at any individual step in the chain, so that in case you get overloaded, you can go and look at one of those steps separately from the others as to where that improvement needs to be made, if so. In case it gets backed up or whatever. This
is why I like to have Port Moyer around. They are extremely sharp, and about the time I don't have an explicit answer, they do. Can I explain to everyone? So imagine that we're all sitting around at the FileMaker developer, we're at a bar, or a restaurant, even better, with some alcohol. And we have a meeting, and people start asking questions like that. This is what DevCon is supposed to be, is people sitting around. Moyer knows a lot more about Docker. Jacob probably knows something that Chris doesn't know, blah, blah, blah. And everyone's getting motivated and enthusiastic about it and learning information. And then, someone comes out and shows us a chart. This is great, blah, blah, blah. This is awesome. So There's a bunch of Docker stuff here. I mean, it should be like a webinar with Docker, but I'm not the Docker guy, so I can't really do it. I could broadcast it, but I'd have to have someone else come in and do the Docker stuff. So there you go. Scott Kane just posted some more information about performance, about things. What's that?
Yeah, that was the one that I read.
Yeah.
Some of the interesting parts of that actually are, at least in this test, they were showing lower performance out of Linux at certain levels, lower number of concurrents, but also better response time. Like the performance fell off a cliff at a lower concurrent users, but it was more responsive over the term. So
yeah, who knows what they've
interesting.
done on that. So yeah, I mean, it's, it's like if our lives weren't complicated enough, now we basically have 5 different editions of FileMaker Server we have to be experts on. We got FileMaker Server Mac, FileMaker Server Windows, FileMaker Server Linux, and FileMaker Cloud 1, which is still in market, and FileMaker Cloud 2, and everyone's different.
Yep. And I actually did want to note one thing about that blog post. It is server 19.1. Which does not include the fixes that Claris made to the database engine that were identified on the forums that are included in server 19.2. So,
land a plane. Sorry, Organ Dean. Okay, Organ Dean, send me money, and I'll include you in the broadcast. How about that for landing the plane? This is your captain. Thank you for flying Richard Airlines. Please send us money, and then we can take good care of you. We always appreciate you have the choice with watching other daily live streams at 1 o'clock. We greatly appreciate you watching Jacob Taylor here and Richard not crash everyone into the ground. And if you disliked any of the 4-letter words that were in this broadcast, they will be momentarily sanitized and deleted along with any other unsavory conversations. Right? That's it, baby. That's it, Jacob. Right? You good?
Yep.
Cool.
Sounds good.
Adios, folks.
Guys just stepped up the whole way. Calm, cool, collected. The quarterback, great read, good patience. More importantly, great job up front protecting this quarterback to give you a chance. And that's all you can ask for.
Trying to rally down 10. 9:25 to go here in the fourth. Short motion by Amendola from the left. Brady takes the shotgun snap. Stands in, throws it left for Amendola. Reaches up and snacks a high throw and lands inside the 10. Rolling to the 9. Slightly behind him, but Danny makes the grab.